ever made pita bread at home and it didn't bake up, puffy and light and airy and with that beautiful pita pocket, I understand. I've got you. I'm gonna show you how to make incredible pita bread right out of your home oven. And we're using our sourdough discard. These are light, fluffy, airy pita breads. And they have that beautiful pocket right inside. I know you're gonna love this recipe. I'm Amy from amybakesbread.com, and I'm gonna share with you how to make these. You're gonna be a rock star in your own kitchen. Let's go. I printed out the recipe. You can grab this on my website, amybakesbread.com. This is my sourdough discard pita bread. And we're gonna go ahead and mix up the ingredients in the bowl of my stand mixer. I have my kitchen scale. I love using weight measurements for my recipes. You can also find the measurements in cups if that's what you're more familiar with, but I do recommend weight is going to make the process way easier for you, less guessing, but cups will also work. I know it's hard to make that transition mentally. It was for me anyway. Put my bowl on the scale. I'm gonna tare my scale, and we're gonna start by adding in our water. Now this, even though this is a discard recipe, warm water is gonna help this to go faster. Warm water helps instant yeast as well as sourdough, so any kind of yeast. So definitely make sure your water's warm. I wouldn't go over 100 degrees though. I used to say in my recipe posts, like the temperature of like a baby's bathwater or a baby bottle or something like that. That's kind of the feel that you're going for, but really that's around 98 degrees is what you're gonna wanna go for. So we've got our warm water in there. You definitely do want it warm though too if you're using discard straight from the fridge, because that will bring the temperature down in your dough if it's cold. I'm gonna add my discard right into my mixer as well. Okay, this is discard that's just been sitting around in my fridge and I need to use it up. It gives moisture, it gives a little bit of extra flavor. If it's more sour, if it's been more fermented, it's gonna give more of that sour flavor into these pita breads. Now, if you wanted to make this recipe 100% sourdough, you could do that as well. You just leave the instant yeast out, and you're gonna have to allow for more time for the dough to rise before you go ahead and bake them and puff them up. But you can definitely do that if you don't wanna make this as a discard recipe. Okay, I added in my discard. I've got my water in there. We're gonna go ahead and add in our instant yeast. I love this brand. This is the SAF instant yeast. You can find it on Amazon. I get it a lot at my local mill, and it's a really great brand if you need a brand of instant yeast. Then we're gonna add in our sugar. Okay, as soon as I added that, I wish you were in my kitchen. This is what I tell my kids when I have them bake with me. I'm like, come smell this. Put your nose in the bowl. And you can smell that yeasty smell that's telling you this is getting active. It's going to raise your dough. If you're using a dry active yeast instead of the instant yeast, you're gonna wanna activate it before adding it into your dough here. But with the instant yeast, you don't have to do that, but I still like to smell it and be like, yep, that's active. I can smell that. I know that it's gonna work, because there is nothing worse than mixing up all of this dough and you end up with pita bread that does not rise because you didn't know that your yeast was dead and it was, you know, a year old or something. I do keep that instant yeast in the fridge. That helps to preserve the freshness. Okay, we're gonna add in the sugar, and then we're gonna put in some olive oil. Okay, if you're new to using a scale, you wanna tare your scale in between each addition. I just know the numbers and keep adding them on top, but you can do it that way too. Just kind of depends on what you're used to. And then scales, sometimes they'll get like the really, larger numbers, anything above 10 grams. But if you're adding these smaller amounts, I do this sometimes with cinnamon or salt even, it may not register if you've tared the scale. So watch for that. And sometimes you may have to use your teaspoon measurements if your scale can't read those like really small numbers. But I'm just gonna add this in. I can see it right here. I'm doing 12 grams of salt. All right, then we're gonna add in our flour. I like a little bit of whole wheat in these pitas. I just think that it gives some nice extra flavor to the dough. But if you didn't have whole wheat flour, you could just use the all-purpose flour completely without the whole wheat. And then we'll add in the flour, just the all-purpose flour. You could use a bread flour here. That would have a little bit higher protein content. That would be fine too, but you may not need quite as much flour. So I've got all of my ingredients in here. I actually held back a little bit of the flour. I like to do that just so I can make sure that my dough feels correct. With a scale, it's gonna be much more accurate, but I still do like to hold back just a tiny bit of flour, and you'll see me, I'll add it in as I'm mixing this up. So we're gonna go ahead, all these things are in my bowl here, we're gonna go mix it up. I'm using the uni mixer today. So I'm just putting my bowl right in here. I've already attached these two pieces. Push them down. This is a way that you can actually add more ingredients in here if you wanted to. I really like this mixer, especially for bread recipes. I do have a YouTube video and a blog post actually all about my 4 favorite mixers. I have a bunch of mixers. My kids have a cottage bakery that we've been running for a while. So I do have quite a few mixers, and I like different things about all of them. So if you're in the market for a mixer, check out that video. We're gonna turn this on. The uni, you come up to the top here and turn it on with this button. Okay, so I'm coming in here to feel this. I'm going to add in a little bit of this extra flour that I had reserved because I want this to be tacky and not overly sticky. Discard can vary in the amount of moisture that's in it, the amount of liquid. And so sometimes you have discard that's more runny, less runny, and so you may need to add a touch more flour. Okay, let's feel this. Oh, that feels better. So we're just gonna let this knead for about 5 to 8 minutes or so until the dough feels really smooth and strong. And really you're kind of looking for this window pane in the dough, which it's not quite there yet. See how it broke apart? You don't want it to break apart. You want that gluten to really develop in there and get strong, and you've got those gluten strands together, causing the dough to be able to rise really well when you go ahead and bake it. So we're gonna let it mix a little bit longer. Okay, notice how this dough is tacky to the touch, like that. And then we're checking for window pane. See if this is window pane where you can see through the dough. See the light through the dough, but it doesn't break. All right, we're ready. We'll pull this out. This mixer does have a little bit of a fan in here, and it's also got the lights, which is kind of a nice feature. Dough is done. It looks so beautiful. I don't know. I get happy when I pull dough out of my mixer. It is not overly sticky, but it's still a little bit tacky. Okay, I'm gonna just move this into a container here. Now I could just let it rise in my mixing bowl, but I need to use my mixing bowl for something else. So I'm putting it in a container. I love to use a plastic shower cap. I'm just gonna set it like this. We're gonna let it rise. Come back to it in probably about an hour, depends on how cold your kitchen runs. If you have a really warm kitchen, it can even be maybe a half an hour, but typically about an hour with this instant yeast recipe. The dough has risen. It is now time to shape into my little pita bread balls. Look how pretty that is. It's coming. There it goes. You can put a little bit of oil in your container if you want to. A little spray of oil can help it come out easier from your container, but I don't know. I used to do that a lot, and now I don't like to do it as much, and I don't really even have a reason why, other than I think that it makes the dough maybe a little bit harder to work with once you pull it out, just because it's a little bit oily, but you can do that if you want to. Okay, I've got my dough right here, and I'm going to cut it into 8 equal sized pieces. If you want to be super precise, they're around 115 grams per pita bread. So you could weigh them on your scale, and you want them to each be about 115 grams. We're going to be baking these individually, so I don't feel a need to make them exact right now, but if I was baking them like all together, then I'd want them to be more exact, because I don't want one to bake faster than the other. But because these are going to be individual, it doesn't really matter. So we're just cutting these into 8 pieces, and then we're going to shape them into balls. The way that I like to shape them is I will take a piece of dough like this, and then I will pinch it up into my fingers, working around as I go. And then I take the ball and I put it on the counter, that little seam side down, and I roll and kind of drag it on the counter with my hand, kind of in like a C shape. And you get a nice little ball. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that with all of these dough balls. And once I've got them all into balls, I'm gonna cover them and let them rest for about 30 minutes. Okay, once you've got all of your dough balls shaped, you're just gonna cover them with a kitchen towel for about 30 minutes. Our pita bread dough looks perfect. It's sat here for about 30 minutes. It's puffed up a little bit. It is ready to bake. I forgot to mention that after I made these into balls and covered them, I preheated my oven. I heated it super hot, 550 degrees, with a baking stone in the oven. Some of the issues people have when making pita bread are typically that there is no pocket. And so we want to do everything we can to get that pita pocket, okay? And in order to do that, we have to use a really hot oven. We need to use a baking stone. We need to add some steam while the pita is baking. It's gonna bake really fast once we roll it out and bake it. And then we need to keep it kind of moist. So when it comes out of the oven, we're gonna stick it on a plate with a towel, okay? So we're gonna keep it covered, kind of keep that moisture in. And then when we roll the dough out, we don't want it to have any holes in it when we're rolling it out. Those are things that often are hang-ups when you're making pita bread. So we're gonna try to do all of those things and hope that the majority of these come out with a pocket. Now, every so often you're gonna have one that doesn't come out with a pocket. That's just normal. It's still gonna taste delicious. It just may not have that pita pocket. That happens sometimes when you're baking. You can do everything right and still have little things that weren't exact. But our goal is to get as many pita pockets as we can. Let's roll them out. We're gonna start with our ball. I like to press it out into a circle to start with. And then we want to start rolling it kind of flat. You can use, if you need to use a little bit of extra flour down as you're rolling, that's fine. But I like to roll one direction, pick it up, flip it over. About 45-degree turn every time, right? Sorry, 90-degree. 90-degree turn. You pick it up, and this way you start to get this nice, even, circular shape that the pita bread is gonna, take shape. That's how you get them round. I do this with pizza dough too. Anything like that. You want to make sure that you're not getting any holes in here as they're going, or else you're not gonna, probably get that nice pocket. I like to try to roll them kind of thin, but they probably end up about 6 to 7 inches. They will spring back a little bit. So once you have your pita rolled out like this, okay, I'm gonna set it to the side so we can kind of bake them all at once. But this is basically ready to go into my hot oven. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll out the others. My pita are perfectly rolled out. They're just sitting here waiting. I've got my first one in here covered. It puffed up so nicely. I don't want to ruin the puff, so I'm just gonna let the steam come out on its own, and I'm gonna keep that right in this nice little towel. I've got my pita bread. I'm gonna stick it right in the center of my preheated oven, on top of my baking stone, and then I have a little pan in the bottom where I'm gonna put a couple ice cubes, and that will release the steam and help get the nice puff. Check out this puff. Gorgeous. Oh, perfect puff. Look how gorgeous this pita bread turned out. It's been probably, I don't know, 10 minutes. It's cooled down a little bit. And most of these got a pocket. They all puffed up a lot and we got pockets, which is a tricky thing with pita sometimes. So following those steps are gonna give you the best chance for success. I love stuffing this pita with chicken, lettuce, anything, but we also just love ripping off pieces and dipping it in some good hummus. Does that not look amazing? Wow. Okay. You guys have to make this. So good, quick and easy with your discard. Who knew that you could make incredible sourdough discard pita right at home? No reason to go buy it at the store anymore. I think you're gonna love this one. Go check it out, amybakesbread.com.